Hi guys, and welcome to the channel. This is Sam Evans reporting for the Electric Singularity. I have some extremely exciting news to share with you. In fact, it's breaking news that hasn't been reported by any media organization anywhere at all. This is brand new information on pricing and specifications for BYD cars. Now, I believe this information is incredibly decisive and important and signifies a true tipping point with price parity between petrol and diesel cars versus fully electric vehicles. I think, in fact, we've actually gone over that point with this information, as these new electric vehicles will be priced below price parity and yet have significantly better features than their ICE comparison counterparts. This is the start of the revolution in Australia. I hope BYD can get their cars to other countries outside of China as quickly as possible and start selling them, as I know they're going to sell by the millions at these prices. Now, guys, this is just crazy. Really crazy. After speaking to BYD today, I highly recommend you jump on the website evdirect.com.au, place a pre-order right now. If you're going to buy a car within the next 6 to 24 months, I highly recommend you jump on this website straight away, register your interest, which is basically an unofficial pre-order, straight away. As soon as reservations open on July 1, I believe the website will crash, and whether or not you're able to register first or 5,000th is anyone's guess. And I believe you may miss out on their first batch of vehicles, which are currently being built right now at BYD's factory, where Nextport, the Australian distributor, has actually set up full production lines of right-hand drive vehicles for the Australian market. Now, you can imagine there is zero chance Nextport is going to be able to build anywhere near enough, or BYD will be able to build anywhere near enough right-hand drive vehicles for the demand we are guaranteed to see in Australia for this vehicle at the price it will be launched at. I have some incredibly exciting news about the BYD Tang. BYD Tang is BYD's 7-seat, pretty much all new SUV. Now, the body shape is the familiar BYD Tang. However, the model coming to Australia at the end of this year will be all electric. It'll have dual motors, 7 seats, and Nextport have just told me today on the phone that it will be priced at an incredible price, which, to be honest, I'm still in shock at what they've said. Now, news media reports said earlier this year that the BYD Tang would cost between $60,000 and $100,000. That was incorrect. The pricing is going to be below $50,000 drive away. That's what I was told today. Now, I couldn't believe this answer. In fact, I'm still shocked that this is true. So when they responded and said to me, it's going to be below $50,000 drive away, I said, oh, will that be for the base model? Because the price seemed too good to be true. And they said, no, it won't be the base model. That model will have leather interior, will have all the basically high-end features that the car has. So it'll be more like a Tesla, where you buy the car, it comes fully spec'd, and you don't need to order any other models. If this is true, if this does eventuate, then this car from BYD, the Tang, is going to sell like hotcakes. I think it'll sell potentially just as well, if not better, than the EA1, which is going to cost under 35,000 Australian dollars. But remember, hatchbacks, you can get those for $25,000 in Australia. So you can get those at a slightly lower price than the EA1, a petrol equivalent. However, you cannot get a 7-seat petrol equivalent to the Tang in that size vehicle with that level of luxury, that level of performance. Remember, this thing has 360 kilowatt. It has dual motors and does 0 to 60 miles per hour or 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4.6 seconds. This thing is basically the equivalent of, say, a Mercedes AMG. That's what it is. In fact, it's faster. This is crazy news. Now I'm going to share with you some more information about the Tang. Powering the all-wheel drive BYD Tang are two 180 kilowatt electric motors on either axle. So there's a 180 kilowatt motor on the front axle and a 180 kilowatt motor on the rear axle. Both are fed by an 82.8 kilowatt hour battery pack. So guys, that's the specification we'll be getting here in Australia, 82.8 kilowatt hours. And obviously the car will have a maximum power output of 360 kilowatt. Both motors combine to produce a system output of 360 kilowatt, which is enough to propel the Tang from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4.4 seconds or 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 4.3 seconds. In other words, it's one of the quickest SUVs on the planet, and it's the cheapest 7-seater luxury SUV on the planet, and it's powered by BYD's new Blade batteries, which, let's be honest, are incredible. And while I'm a huge Tesla fan, credit where credit is due. BYD have done a brilliant job in manufacturing, designing these batteries to be incredibly safe. If you've seen the videos from the BYD factory, you can see that if these batteries are punctured, so if there was a crash and the battery is damaged, these batteries basically just don't burn. If the battery cells get punctured, the temperature in that area only increases to about 30 to 60 degrees. But if you puncture many of the competitors' batteries, then they are likely to set on fire. And it's extremely difficult to put out those kind of electric fires. So these batteries are ultra safe. Now, guys, the price for this vehicle is much better than you think, because this is the same platform, battery platform, motors, entire electrical system that Toyota will be using. Do you think there's any chance you'll be able to buy a 7-seat luxury SUV from Toyota with these specifications for under $50,000? I think not.
This is a real life version of that. This is a cutaway of the E platform that BYD uses. Now, this has the dual motor, so it's got the electric motor at the back, electric motor, and the control module at the front. In the bottom, obviously, you can see the Blade battery arrangement. So BYD are using this now for their own cars, but in the future, this can be licensed out to other companies. And there's one company which has signed a deal with BYD to use these in their car, the whole thing, all the tech, the battery, the motors. That's Toyota. This is a Toyota electric car.
Now, BYD, as you know, stands for Build Your Dreams, and it's one of China's largest electric vehicle manufacturers. They've even reported, well, at least there's been reports, that BYD will be providing batteries for Hyundai. Now, obviously, this appears as though it's very likely, because what's just happened to Hyundai? They've had to go and replace the batteries in all of their cars worldwide at an enormous cost. This would have cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. If they had been using BYD's Blade batteries, they wouldn't have had to do this. Now, obviously, they've had to do this because of fire risks to the batteries that they used. Now, as I mentioned, BYD has recently joined forces with Toyota to co-fund electric vehicle research, development, and production. It has also just launched a market trial in Norway, which represents its first passenger car effort outside of its domestic market. Now, originally I thought Nextport, which is the Australian distributor of BYD vehicles, I thought surely they must be owned by BYD, because BYD has a number of ventures in other countries outside of China where they build a range of vehicles, primarily buses, electric buses, but they also build trucks, dumpsters, a wide range of other utility vehicles in other countries using their own manufacturing. They have their own plant in California, Brazil, and other countries. So I assumed that if Nextport were going and creating this enormous Really, it's an enormous thing that Nextport are doing in distributing BYD cars, because they're not only doing that, they're also putting together BYD buses and other commercial vehicles at their new facility in New South Wales, which they're spending over $700 million on. However, surprising to me, after doing some research, I found out that BYD is 100% Australian owned, primarily by a venture capital firm. But there's a number of individual wealthy businessmen in Australia who believe that the time is now to strike fast. So basically, Nextport, or BYD in Australia, are backed by some huge players with deep pockets. Now, Nextport told me they've made a deal with the NRMA. So some of you may be wondering, thinking, well, who's going to service my car? If something happens to my car, will there be any support? Well, Nextport have informed me today that the NRMA will be responsible for looking after your car. Now, they'll service your car, so you won't need to take your car to a dealer. All you'll have to do is give them a call, and the NRMA service technician will either come to your office, wherever's convenient with you, they'll go there and they'll service your car, which obviously, fortunately, one of the fantastic things about electric cars is you basically don't need to service them. Very minimal work is needed. Things like changing wiper blades, changing tires, maybe changing brake fluid every 100,000 kilometers. Very, very minor things that are needed, and just giving the car an overall checkup. Now, remember, changing brake pads is also unlikely to be necessary, as most people drive using regenerative braking. Another huge advantage of a car like this, big 7-seat SUVs, I know because I have one, go through brake pads and rotors like crazy, and it's extremely expensive to replace those. Huge advantage of this car, not only is it on parity with ICE vehicles on price, if not cheaper, and faster. You're not going to need to do what I'm doing and what many of you watching are probably doing, and that is replacing brake pads and rotors at a lot of cost. In addition to that, when you brake using an electric car, you regenerate the battery. So that's another huge advantage to a bigger, heavier car. The more weight you stop, the more energy is sent back into the battery. Now, the size of the battery pack is interesting, 82.8 kilowatt hours. It's not huge for a car this size. My estimates are that with a battery this size, you'll probably get a usable range for this car of around about 400 to 450 kilometers. Now, I still think that's pretty good, and especially at this price range, and especially with this kind of performance. Let's be honest, guys, to get this kind of performance out of an ICE vehicle, whether that be diesel-powered or petrol-powered, you're going to go through a lot of energy. You're going to be using a lot of petrol or diesel. So basically, high-performance cars don't actually have the long ranges you would expect them to. Therefore, the range is probably on par with many ICE cars already on the market that are similar in size and weight. Now, I don't know about you and your country, where you're from, but here in Australia, there are no incentives for EVs. None at all. In fact, we're doing the opposite. We're taxing EVs. This, of course, is having the effect of us not selling a whole lot of EVs, and car makers are extremely reluctant to import their EVs to Australia. Another reason they're reluctant to import them is because we don't have any carbon taxes. So there's no penalties for polluting the atmosphere as much as you want to in Australia. So in a market where less than 1% of new car sales are electric, car makers have therefore in Australia been reticent about introducing more models while a lack of government support policy persists. By circumventing the dealership model, the BYD vehicles that will be on sale at the end of this year or early next year will be up to 30% cheaper than other electric vehicles. BYD says we're targeting a sale price that's at parity with internal combustion engines. Now, obviously, this price is at parity. They're not just talking, they're doing. It is understood that Nextport's partnership with BYD is the first of its kind with the Chinese car maker, which is uncommon in that it is only one of a few that makes its own batteries as well as its cars, Tesla being another example. Now, guys, remember, why is it that BYD, or Nextport, the distributor in Australia of BYD, can sell this car at such an incredible price? Well, BYD makes its own batteries, and remember, the kind of technology BYD are using has enabled them to significantly reduce the costs. Using the Blade battery, which is not, it doesn't actually use any exotic materials like cobalt or nickel, they can significantly reduce costs. In addition to that, because it's lithium phosphate, it actually can do a lot more cycles than standard lithium ion batteries. So BYD say you can get between 3,000 to 4,000 charges before you get to 80% battery degradation. In other words, you can probably do about 1.2 million kilometers with this car before the battery dips below 80%. That is huge. Now, what this means is, after you're finished with the car, because I highly doubt that you drive one of these more than 1 million kilometers, but you never know, you might. But if, in all likelihood, you would dispose of the car at that point, and then use the battery for other things, including home storage, caravan storage. There's a range of different uses that it would have. As you can see on eBay, many people sell Tesla batteries because there's huge demand for Tesla battery cells and modules. Now, you would expect the same thing would happen for these batteries, which will also have a long life, and probably an even longer life than the Tesla batteries I currently see for sale on eBay. Now, as I mentioned before, BYD showed a video of the battery cell needle test at a press conference in March 2020, which showed a standard lithium battery burning violently after being pierced by a steel needle, with the surface temperature exceeding 500 Celsius. The Blade battery, on the other hand, showed no flame or smoke, and the surface temperature was only 30 to 60 degrees Celsius. Now, BYD's vehicles all come with its proprietary lithium iron phosphate, LFP battery, that the company says is safer and more compact than typical lithium EV batteries. They also take a huge number of charges before any battery degradation kicks in. Now, if you've seen the video, the factory tour of BYD, you'll see that it's true, these batteries are extremely compact. In fact, it looks as though the battery may be only this thin. So it takes up very little space. Now, this is another huge advantage of using lithium batteries, and even greater by using the Blade battery. And I think when they say Blade, they're referring to just how thin this battery is. It's quite incredible how little space it takes up. So what that's going to mean is you're going to get even more cabin space. There's no transmission tunnel. That's removed. That frees up cabin space. There's no engine in the front of the car. That frees up space. So the packaging of an electric car is almost always going to be superior to its equivalent ICE version. This is another advantage for this car. Remember, when you're buying a car like this, you want size. You want a good boot size. You want a good interior size. You might have a family. You might have bikes. You might have surfboards, all kinds of things you want to put in the car. The bigger that interior space is, the better. So, other information. BYD confirmed with me today that there are 6 models coming to Australia, not 4 as was previously reported. These models include the EA1, the Han, the Tang, a utility van, a plug-in hybrid crossover called the BYD Song, and the BYD Quin compact sedan. Now, I'll be producing videos on each of these cars with more information about all of them. And I've actually already have some interesting information on pricing for some of those cars. So if you're interested in finding out what the cost will be for some of those, there's nowhere else you can find that information out. I don't believe that's been released anywhere on the internet. However, I do have confirmed pricing from Nextport. So look forward to that in my further videos. Now, guys, remember to subscribe to see my updates about new BYD models coming to Australia. I'll also be reporting on BYD models coming to other countries, as I'll be keeping a keen eye on that and staying in contact with BYD. So remember to subscribe, and I'll bring you a whole lot of new information about BYD and all the new electric cars coming worldwide. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.